I'll look over this side. Good to see you this morning. Okay. Whoa, where'd my background go? Weird. It's going to be one of those kind of Sundays, isn't it? Glitches never happen until they do. All right. We started, if you weren't here last Sunday, we started looking at the book of Philippians in the New Testament. This is a great little book of 4 chapters, and it's kind of like dynamite, just a big impact in a small thing. Okay, now I don't even have that. All right, David's going to fix it. He's my hero. I'm going to be like David when I grow up. And so we looked at chapter 1 last week, and today I want to look for a few things out of Philippians chapter 2. And hopefully we'll get to read it off the screen. But I'll talk about patterns. And when I don't know what you think of if we play word association. You know, when I think of pattern, I always remember my mom when I was a kid, and in like the 70s, she would sew a lot, and she'd always want to go to the store and buy the little patterns, and then you cut out that freaky little pattern paper, you know, and had all that stuff on it, and then you had to pin it to, not that I have done this, I've seen it, well, my mom, and you pin it to the back of your fabric, and it would show you where to cut, and then you would cut out exactly the right shape and size of your fabric. So then you go to your sewing machine, and she's just sitting there working. And she would make me and my brothers, my dad, you know, some stuff and clothes and things like that. You know, come to think of it, she still owes me that shirt for when I was 10. Probably not going to get that. But we use patterns a lot in different ways. Like architects, if you were to take 10 builders and you were to draw up architectural plans for, let's say, a house, and you were to give 10 sets of the same exact plan to 10 builders and say, go buy exactly this and then build the house, well, what's going to happen? We could pretty much tell that you're going to have 10 identical houses. But what if they did that, but they said, okay, you can make up your own measurements, your own standard by which you think when you measure out when it says 6 feet, you can decide for yourself how long you think 6 feet is, or 37 inches, or whatever the measurement is. You just make up your own determination of what that is. Now, what happens to the 10 structures? Will they be the same? Of course not. One will be tiny, one will be huge, one will be this, and one will be that. And we see that a lot. But one of the things I get from the second chapter of Philippians is that Jesus is the pattern for our life. That we need a pattern. We need examples, and we need something that we can mold and shape our life after. And everybody is going to find something. Everybody's going to have something that they're putting their life after. And the problem is we live in a culture and we live in a society that just says, hey, you decide on your own. You pick it up. If you want it to be Hollywood, if you want it to be Madison Avenue, if you want it to be, some ism or some other belief or pursuit, whatever, just pick something. Doesn't matter. But I believe it does. And so let's read the first section, about the first half of chapter 2. You can read along in your text, or it'll be up here on the screen if you want to look at that. Here's what Paul says. Therefore, if any encouragement in Christ, if there is any consolation of love, if there is any fellowship of the Spirit, if any affection and compassion, make my joy complete, he says, by being of the same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. Do nothing from selfishness. Well, we live in a selfish world, don't we? Everybody says, look out for number one. You deserve a break today. And you take care of you first and forget what somebody else wants. You know, you jockey for position and you make sure you got what you like and you want. And, if I have to stomp on or climb over somebody else to get there, well, too bad. But he says, do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit. But here's what you do instead of that. With humility of mind. Now look at this attitude, this kind of a heart, this kind of perspective. Regard, that's an attitude. How you see things. Regard one another as more important than yourself. Do you do that by lowering yourself and say, oh, I'm scum, I'm dirt? No, you do that by raising the others up. And can you imagine a place where everybody treated each other like that? Would you want to be a part of that? Who wouldn't? He says, don't merely look out for your own personal interests. We all have personal interests that we have to take care of. We all have business that we have to attend to. We have priorities, we have chores that have to be done, things, responsibilities that must be met. He says, sure, you do that, but not only that. Do not merely look after your stuff, but also for the interest of others. Imagine a place where everybody is, that doesn't mean meddle. Don't take that as permission to insert yourself and I'm going to decide for you, I'm going to run your life and tell you your business. No, it's a heart of humility. It's based on humility that says, I have an interest in you. I care about what happens to you. I'm going to elevate you to where it matters if you're hurting. It matters. I'm going to rejoice when you do well. I'm going to mourn when you're sad, and so on. We look after the interest of others. And then still talking about our outlook. Have this attitude, which was also in Jesus. Now he's going to describe the heart and the attitude of Jesus. And he says, you need to emulate that and see Christ here is our pattern. This is the attitude of Jesus. Look at what his attitude, who although he existed in the form of God, he did not regard equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself. That's divested himself of all the glory and the majesty, a majesty beyond description, beyond our ability to even begin to conceive of it. And he stepped out of that and put that aside in order to come to this earth, step into human flesh, become one of us, walk this earth so that he could go to the cross and pay the price for the sins which would drag us to hell if left undealt with. He humbled himself by becoming obedient. Well, how obedient? That obedient, to the point of death, even death on a cross. And for this reason, because Jesus was like this and did these things and had this heart in mind, God highly exalted him and bestowed on him, on Jesus, the name which is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee will bow. Some will do it voluntarily. Some will eventually be forced to. I suggest the first one. And of those who are in heaven and on earth and under the earth. And that every tongue will confess that Jesus is Lord to the glory of the Father. There are many that say, don't know, don't care, don't believe that Jesus is Lord, but all will eventually admit. And let us do so before it's too late. And so that being true, he says, my beloved, just as you've always obeyed, not just in my presence, not when I'm just there watching and with you, Paul says, but almost much more in my absence, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. So now about the whole pattern thing, you think about standards. Standards are necessary and standards are a part of life. And you can't build without there it is. Like this. There you go. Yeah, why is that thing there? This is a standard. Everybody's familiar with a ruler or yardstick or one of these things. And you got all these little markings on here, the numbers. Everybody knows how that works. You go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 12, that's a foot, right? 3 of those foots is a yard. And so on. And so when you're trying to measure something, if you want it to measure right, you need to measure it out, make sure it's correct. If not, we've all maybe thought, I'll try to eyeball it. I think that sounds about right, and it turns out it wasn't. But what if you told the world, just make up your own? That sounds, I think a foot's about this long. And somebody next to you says, well, I'm going to believe my truth is that a foot is that long. Okay. And then another person says, I think this should be 1 foot in length. And everybody just builds accordingly. It's chaos. And Well, looks kind of like what society looks like now, right? Because we've been told you can do that. You make up your own truth. Truth is relative. And you don't need a standard. You are the standard for you and your world, and so just do what you want. And look how that's turned out in culture, in society, when you throw away the standard. We can't do that. We do that to our own peril, and we have a standard, and I believe the only standard is this, because it's given to us by the one who has the only right to create the standard in the Lord. And because when you throw out the standard, things like right and wrong, truth and error, who cares? My truth is whatever I decide it is, and so on. Have we ever had a time like that? Yeah, in the book of Judges, you can go away back thousands of years. What is this, like 3,500 years ago or so, in the time of the Judges in the Old Testament? It says this, in those days there was no king in Israel. Every man did was right in his own eyes. That sounds like America, 2024, doesn't it? In at least that last half. Everybody's like, I get to make up for me. And, well, how'd that work out? Well, you go back a few chapters. It says that generation, they were gathered to their fathers. The previous generation dies away. And there arose another generation after them, the next generation, who did not know the Lord, nor yet the work which he had done for Israel. See, they had not passed the torch. They had not educated their children coming up, but the truth of the law and the word and what God did and who God is and all these things. So the next generation comes up, don't know, don't care, haven't learned, haven't been told. So the result is chaos. The result is they don't follow the law. They don't follow the Lord. And you can see if you'll read the book of Judges, how dark it got and how much depravity there was. And that led to all kinds of trouble and problems and death and destruction for them because they did evil in the sight of the Lord and they served the Baal. They start going into idolatry and that, boy, God hates idolatry. It really got bad for them. So I want to show you a couple of things just real quickly that Philippians 2 kind of reminds us of. You probably have more than this, but here's just a couple of that Christ needs to be our pattern for all that we have, but a few that are really highlighted in Philippians 2 is, first of all, that Christ is a pattern of unity. Our God seeks for us to be united. He says, have the same mind, maintaining the same love, united in spirit, intent on one purpose. So he wants us to be united. That's actually what Jesus himself prayed for in John 17. Just hours before his trial and crucifixion would begin, he prays in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he prays for himself, he prays for his disciples, and he prays for those who would believe on him through their word. That's us. And he prays this specific thing for and about us, that we'd all be one. Does that mean we're like robots? We're like, no, See, as I've mentioned before, unity is not achieved when all y'all agree with me. Unity happens and is achieved and only happens when all of us agree with him. And that's what unity is. We all, whatever Jesus says, whatever God wants, and whatever he would have us do and believe, and so on. And so he seeks for his people to be united. A couple other places in the very beginning of 1 Corinthians Chapter 1, verse 10, he exhorts them to that you all agree and there to be no divisions among you. One of the most destructive things in churches is division. More churches have been split. More churches have been, and things like gossip and other things that are or what was here was kind of a cliquishness. They were getting into groups. I'm of Paul. I'm of Peter. I'm Peter. I'm of Apollos. I'm of Jesus. I'm of this person, that person. We got our little political little groupings, as it were, based on a person or a thing or an idea. And it was dividing the church. And he says, stop it. And we got to be of the same mind. In Ephesians 4, he says, be diligent to preserve the unity. If we're going to have unity, we have to preserve the unity. We have to be diligent in it, which means you have to work on it. Maybe unity is not automatic. It's not just happens on its own. We have to diligently work to preserve it. So let's do. Secondly, we see that Jesus is the pattern of humility. Jesus is the epitome. He's the definition of what humility looks like in a human being. You think, what would it look like to be human? Jesus. That's what it looks like. Is humility weakness? Hardly. Because was Jesus humble? Yes. Was he strong? Absolutely. Was he weak? Not even a little. And so it's not weakness. But we're told to do nothing from selfishness or into conceit, but with humility of mind. So humility is not just a heart thing, it's also a mind, it's an attitude that translates itself into behavior. He says, don't look out after your own personal aim, but have this attitude about Jesus. And then he'll say, remember, and he'll describe the humility of Jesus. He was not, he didn't consider his glory something to be held on to. That means to be jealously held on to, like, no, I'm not going to give this glory, this heavenly majesty up. I'm not willing to lay it aside to go down and be one of those humans. Look at what I've got. Look who I am. But he said, stepped out of that and stepped into being just one of us. Take a lot of humility to do that. He humbled himself. How? By becoming obedient to the form of death. So we also see, therefore, because of that, Jesus also, thirdly, he's our standard of what it means to be obedient. God, obviously, from the very beginning, you seek people that he wants people to be obedient. He wants us to just do what he says. Read the book of Deuteronomy, where he will talk a lot about the law of Moses, and you'll just see that principle there as well. He says you need to keep the law. Keep the law, keep the law, keep the law. You go to Psalms and you go to other places where it talks about those who will keep his word. Keep his word. That means to do what it says, to obey. He wants obedient children, not for his ego, but for his glory and our benefit too. He says that Jesus was found in appearance as a man. He humbled himself by becoming obedient. And look at how obedient, look how far his obedience was willing to go. All the way to the cross. I mean, that's obedience to the bitter end. And so he wants us to be obedient. He said here in verse, I think, 12, so then, just as you have always obeyed, not just when I was there, but when I was not there, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. Keep obeying. Jesus is also, fourthly, he's our pattern of submission. Now, I don't know what you think about that word. I guess as an American, as a dude, sometimes we might chafe a little inwardly at the word submission. That sounds kind of not very cool, not very fun. Like, wait, I gotta acquiesce to somebody else's idea, somebody else's authority, somebody else's command. Yeah, I remember when you got your first job? Sometimes you learn about submission the hard way. Or my parents were pretty good about teaching us. They applied the Board of Education to the seat of knowledge lots of times. And I earned every one of those little spankings. Well, no, there was the one. I was framed. But for most of them, I earned those spankings, and I didn't like it. I didn't want it. It hurt. It was embarrassing. It made me mad. But now I can look back and just thank them and appreciate that for the result, the intended result. And I'm glad they did. They loved me enough to teach me there's sometimes you have to submit. There's an authority, and you have to like it or not. You have to say, yes, sir, yes, Lord. And we've got to submit. Jesus did, and he submitted to the will of the Father. Especially in the book of John, you will see him always say, I'm not here to do anything but the will of my Father. They always tried to get him to do some other agenda and go some other direction. He's like, no, I am here to glorify God, the Father, and I'm here to do his will, period. And over again, he would make that clear. Look at this. I don't know, if we had a contest and to say, what do you think is the most difficult passage in the whole Bible? And it would be interesting if we all submitted. We ought to do that one of these days, just for curiosity's sake. You write down on a piece of paper. For me, I think the most difficult passage in the whole Bible. Here's my submission. Philippians 2:14. Do all things without grumbling or disputing. One, I think the NIV says complaining. I've caught myself one time complaining. It literally was. I was complaining about the verse that says don't complain. It's like, because it uses all. Like, all the time? I can't complain. Just, come on, can I just complain a little bit? That's just, man, you can't complain at all? But he says that, yeah. Do all things without grumbling, murmuring. Stupid, I can't believe it. Because sometimes we're like, oh yeah, I'll submit. I'll submit to my boss, to my parents, to Jesus, while I think they're looking, but I'll do it. Outwardly, I might be, okay, I will. But inwardly, I'm like, stupid, that's dumb, I can't believe it. Because of our pride or our ego gets in the way. Or we think we know better, right? And no, it's got to be total. That you need to submit outwardly and inwardly. Now, is that easy or hard? Kind of depends. It's probably some of both. But he says, but we've got to be people willing and able to submit to Jesus. Look what Jesus has. He submitted to the will of the Father. He submitted to the cross. You don't get more submissive than that. Jesus never asked us to do anything that he didn't already do himself to the max, to the full. He didn't say, you submit, and I'm not going to, but you got to submit. He submitted himself all the way to the bitter end. And nothing more bitter than that end. So let's be people that submit. And then lastly, Jesus is our pattern. He's our template for faithfulness. We got to hang in there and go the long haul. We got to go the distance with him. Christian life is described using the metaphor of a race in a couple of places. In the next chapter of Philippians, as well as 1 Corinthians 9, for example. But when you think of a race to describe the Christian life, don't think of the 50-yard dash. This is not a sprint we're in, is it? It's a marathon. And it's really a combination of marathon and obstacle course. Because, boy, there are obstacles, aren't there? And if we go into it thinking that the Christian race is just a jog up at Deming Park, hey, how you doing? Just easy peasy, lemon squeezy, right? Someone just said, this is fun. I can just go to church, have some fun, go to potluck. I like those. And just, have a good time. And then that's it. But once things get hard, right? We talked about this when we talked about the parable of the sower. Oh, it gets hard. Wait. People are laughing at me. People are mocking me. There's temptations. There's difficulty. There's opposition. Oh, this is stupid. I didn't sign up for that. Then phooey on it. And we throw it. We throw Jesus under the bus and we say, forget it. I'm out. No, we got to be faithful. Faithful to his law. Faithful to the legacy. Faithful to the life of walking in the light as he is in the light. And stay with it. He uses the idea of holding fast. That's hanging on. Sometimes you might feel like you're hanging on by your fingertips. It's so hard because we go through seasons of struggle and pain and grief and loss and really we feel like the rope in a tug of war. But he says, even then, hold on, because it's so worth it. There's no promise that it'll always be easy. There actually is promise that it'll be often hard. If you're looking for promises, here's that one. But he says, hold fast to the word of life. Don't turn loose of God and his word and his truth and his law. You need to keep going. Even when it's inconvenient. Even when people don't understand you. Even when people will mischaracterize you and think you're some kind of weirdo for doing this. Why would... keep going. And so here's some things about standards, just to leave with you. Patterns, if you want to have patterns, you got to have standards. You can't just say, just make it up in your head or just how you go along. You got to have standards, and standards have to be followed and have to be applied. And then doing that leads to unity, and unity is really important. And it requires humility, because I'm going to have to set aside my ego. What if I think, because I'm a man and I can pull myself up and I know better, and my ego says, no, I got to do it my way. But no, I got to do it his way. And I got to follow his pattern of total submission. Do I lay aside my ego, my pride, what I think, and say, as your will be done, God. And I got to hang on and keep hanging on. So that's my encouragement to you guys to do. Let's do that. So ask yourself, is Jesus the pattern of your life today? Maybe kind of think about that, wrestle with these a little bit. And, how do you know? And is the word the pattern for your belief? Or is it just like, well, in Grandma's church they said, or this is what I feel? When you're thinking about what do you believe and why do you believe, if there's a lot of, well, I think and a lot of I feel, that needs to be a red flag to you and go, oh, because what I think and what I feel, my opinion, is irrelevant. It's pointless. And frankly, sorry, so is yours. Because I'm not the pattern. I'm not the standard, and you aren't either. This is. And so let's make sure that everything we know and believe and why we do what we do comes straight from there. And then is his will pattern. Jesus said everything is according to the will of God. What is the will of God for your life? And do you know? And is his glory the pattern for your behavior? Like Jesus, he sought his Father's glory. We should do the same. What will glorify God? And let's go after that. So I'll leave you with this one. And remember, you should memorize that if you haven't already. Have this attitude, which was the attitude of Jesus. And so let's pursue that. If there are any here that need to respond to invitation, if you want to give your life to Jesus or you're not sure, if you're thinking, I do, but I'm not sure, what does the Bible say about that? Come grab one of us. We'll sit down with the Bible, study it out. Or if there's somebody seeking prayers or some help you need to let us be aware of, we encourage you to come and make that known while together we stand and sing.